Hi, my name is Ali Kelly and I'm the CEO and founder of MindBlank. Before we get started today, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today. And I know it's all virtual, but I'm actually here from Brisbane today. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Juggera and the Turrbal people and the elders past, present and emerging. I myself have the traditional bloodline of the traditional Incas of Peru. So it's really important to just do that acknowledgement because I'm here today because of the elders that have walked before me. Now, just a little bit about me is I come from a psychology background. I also come from a creative arts background. Being the founder of MindBlank, I do come from a place of lived experience of mental health. Today, I'll actually be sharing with you what is MindBlank. And ideally, we would have actually been performing something to you today because what we do is, look, we're on a mission aiming to reduce the risk of suicide through interactive performances in schools, in workplaces, and in the community. And yeah, mental health is close to home because, you know, I myself have had direct experience within my family that has actually triggered wanting to do more when it comes to the mental health promotion space. So in terms of why we exist, because we'll be talking about mental health today, I just want to give you all a heads up that if anything that we'll be talking about is too close to home for you, feel free to take 5, come back. Hopefully we'll be providing a lot of insights and just showcasing really what we do. So it shouldn't be anything too dramatic or triggering today. And look, if you need to, after this session, we will be having a question and answer. So please brainstorm during this presentation to see if you can have some questions for me at the end. So look, statistics show that actually suicide is the #1 leading cause of death for young people aged 14 plus. That's a pretty big deal. We also have stats to say that those in the country and regional areas, young people are up to 60% more at risk. And some of that's because there's less services, but some of that is also more isolation and all sorts of things going on. But we also have some First Nations communities that are up to 8 times more at risk of suicide than their non-Indigenous peers. So that is why we exist. We exist because we aim to empower the community to know what to do in a time of need and empower people to be proactive about applying some suicide prevention techniques. So the crux or foundation of our work is to help identify signs and symptoms of mental health and also make sure that people know what to do in a time of need, what does help seeking look like, and where can they actually get some of that help. So I'm just going to show you a quick explainer video. Bear with me as I just share my screen. So 1 second. Yeah, just a quick explainer video to show you some of the work that we do. Now, so far, we've hosted over 400 workshops directly impacting over 40,000 Australians. So let's give you your first MindBlank experience.
MindBlank. Forum Theatre. What is MindBlank? What is Forum Theatre? Why am I asking me? Because I know, that's why. But before I tell you anything, let me show you something. Inside this building is Dan. Dan is young, unemployed, he's run away from home and his school. He's terribly lonely and he's depressed. He's just about to make an important decision in his life, one that will seemingly make his life better, but will, in fact, make his life a living hell. Come with me. This way. Shh. Dan's just about to arrive.
Hey guys, what you watching? TV.
Come over and chill with us, man. Have a cone? Have a smoke?
Oh, no, I'm good, eh?
Take a load off, man. It's alright. We haven't had a chance to relax with you yet.
Yeah, that's right. I'll probably just head off to bed.
Why? Have a cone.
I've never really done it, so I don't. I don't know.
What?
Ed, like what?
Ever.
No, never.
So, after you.
You try once.
Here you go.
Well,
Mouth there.
Yeah. Can load him up.
And pull in. Yep.
Freeze! And this is the start of a new era in Dan's life. He thinks he's found the answers to all these feelings of loneliness and poor self-esteem. And this is Forum Theatre. You, the audience, get to decide what happens next. You can think of anything that may help Dan resist the onslaught of this peer pressure. Anything that is, except maybe changing who the character is, or coming up with a magic solution. He's rich, for instance, or a pregnant woman, or... Actually, I like that idea. Let's make him Scottish as well.
Oh, no. I can't do any drugs. I've got a baby.
Freeze! And this is what Mind Blank does. It promotes mental health issues in a nice, safe, entertaining way. But let's get some serious suggestions. What do you guys think?
I reckon he should just tell him to go get stuffed.
Get stuff?
Yeah.
No, I think you should pretend to smoke it.
Pretend to smoke it?
Yeah.
You can't pretend to smoke it. No, you're right. You should just man up and say no.
Okay, so what is it, guys? Is it pretend to smoke it or just say no?
Say no.
Say no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's try that. In this scene, Dan's just going to say no, and we'll see if this works for him.
Hey guys, what you watching?
TV. Had a long day, man.
Yeah, big day.
Come over, have a sit, have a chill, bit of a cone, maybe?
Nah, I'm good.
Go on, mate.
Nah, I better not. Nah.
But why?
Just no. You know, I've never done it, so no, I've got to...
Come on, man. You know, never done it.
No.
You never know. Come on.
Yeah, you gotta sit down. Come on. And we go.
All right.
Okay,
Put your mouth on the hole there. Yep, and just breathe in.
Freeze! So that didn't work. And that's what you get. It's the audience versus the actors. The audience are trying to fix things, and the actors are trying to remind the audience that things aren't always that easy to fix. This is how Mind Blank promotes mental health awareness in a fun, safe, and informative way. People will walk away from the Mind Blank experience with specific knowledge of mental health issues, ways of promoting good behaviour, and tactics for avoiding harm during times of crisis. I love leaving these guys frozen. Makes me feel like a man. But what about Dan? What should he do next? This is one of the many bad decisions he makes. What would you do next? Well, you get to fill in the blanks. That's Mind Blank.
Okay, so let me just explain to you a little bit more about the insights of the story of Dan, because if we had a chance, that's what you guys would be seeing today. So look, Dan's story starts where there's a disruption in the home environment because there's a split with the parents, mum meets a new bloke, he's got a new stepdad, there's new kids in the scenario, they all move towns. So often we find a lot of young people can relate to that. We do literally ask them how many have had to move schools before. The first instance is that Dan actually starts off at a new school and has never had to do it before. So he's never quite had to make some of those friends because he just inherited them. So the first day of school, unfortunately, Dan gets off at the wrong foot. These young people he's come across in the playground aren't that supportive of him, which kicks him into a negative downward spiral of self-talk that ends up being really harsh on himself. It then ends up being that he's become more and more isolated at school. And one of the teachers calls him in for a chat, but Dan's not really that confident and doesn't really tell the teacher what's going on at all and still quite awkward in his own skin. Meanwhile, at home, there's tension that develops because you've got little ones. His parents aren't that bad to him. You know, it's just that they're concerned that his grades have started dropping and they've got enough on their plate, so they're a little bit stressed. And the relationship at home doesn't quite end up resolving well. So it ends up being that when Dan's a bit older, the arguments they've always had at home just hit the peak and he gets asked to leave. Dan's now about 16 in journey and he's left to get on Centrelink and find his own accommodation, but he can't really afford it, which is where you've just seen that drug scene. The peer pressure scene comes in because for the first time he thinks he's found a solution, having friends and whatnot around him, and they're obviously not that great at influence on him. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is Dan saying yes to some of these choices does end up meaning that an addiction kicks in. We do tell the young people that Dan has early onset of depression that has formed earlier, and that taking drugs and alcohol are likely to spiral him down even quicker to that rock bottom. And that's what happens. He does become addicted. He tries to stop on his own. He can't. His flatmates aren't that happy with him, end up kicking him out of the home because he can't pay his own rent because he's just not really doing well. And the character ends up homeless at a bus shelter. The teacher from earlier in the storyline does reach out to him, but at that stage, that's the first gesture of help the poor fella actually ends up getting. And at that stage, it's too late to intervene. So ideally, what our facilitator would do is go back through the storyline. And for those that do know what forum theatre is, the drama teachers, etc., is our programs are inspired by forum theatre, but we're not traditional forum theatre. The reason for that is we actually have key scenes that we want the young people to revisit, and we actually already know what the best case end outcome is. So ideally in our format, we want the young people to voice their own solutions, to come up with the ideas to get to where we want them to. And if they don't, our facilitators will talk them through to make sure that they're aware that that particular outcome exists. So I'm just going to really quickly recap what are the actual lessons from Dan's story that we go through for that particular program. So the first one that we intervene and replay is actually the first day at school. It's an awkward encounter. The first people he's come across aren't that friendly, but that scene actually triggers him into that negative self-talk spiral. So what is the best case scenario? The best case scenario is that the young people in the audience acknowledge that the best case scenario is that maybe he has to find other people and not necessarily end up taking that initial engagement to heart the way he did initially. Dan's not necessarily that confident as a person, so we love it when the young people can kind of like guide us to say, well, what does confidence look like? Can you actually show us? But it's about making choices and choosing the right people there. So we try and encourage building resilience for him to identify that, hey, if these guys aren't really cutting him a slack, maybe the best case is to just kind of find something that you can chat to relate to them just on a superficial way, and then get yourself out of there and go find other people, because maybe instead of him thinking that something's wrong and it's him and that, you know, being down on himself, he could sometimes feel like he's that who wants to make friends with me, I'm a loser, that mentality. Instead of spiraling into that, you know, perhaps there's absolutely nothing wrong with him, and perhaps it's just a matter of finding some people that he can relate to. The next scene that we intervene with is actually the teacher scene. And the initial teacher, what you've got is a young male that's closed off and not really saying much. And the teacher's asking, you know, trying to prompt notice that they're isolated, but they're just not quite that engaged with Dan. It's the first time Dan's had someone like that come to them, and the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. So one insight we try and teach the young people is that, you know, us adults, we can't read your mind, and if something's going on, you have to tell us sometimes. But why we love staging that teacher scene is there's so many insights. So sometimes it's the fact that the first person to go to for help may not be able to help you. You know, sometimes people out there don't necessarily have the skills to help support you. So we try and remind the students there, you know, what are the other responsible adults in your life that you could go to talk about these things. So we highlight where are the outreach points within the school that they could go to. who do they have in the community within their own network they may be able to chat to? Or, you know, what are some of the community organizations that exist if either themselves or a peer is actually needing support for their mental and emotional health? After the teacher scene, there is actually a scene that we explore, which is the conflict of home. Now, that's the only scene that sometimes can be a trigger point for young people, and that's actually generally we stage it mindfully, but the reason it can be a trigger is that sometimes young people do have these conflicts that do actually end up in a similar outcome to Dan. And look, what we try to do with that scene is break it down. So we try and build resilience and conflict resolution skills. So ideally what we want to do with the young people is take them on that journey that, you know, mum's overwhelmed, Dan's overwhelmed, both of them potentially need to check in to see how they're going and how they can be both supportive of each other more. But one lesson there is it's not necessarily Dan's responsibility to take on the burden, the pressure of mum's well-being on his own shoulders. But again, if he hasn't disclosed what's going on with him, how's mum going to know? So it is a conflict that starts over something simple like cleaning around the house. So we try and show the children that, you know, is that really what the argument is about? Generally, no. What are some positive things you can do to help resolve there? You know, start with cleaning up the mess, or maybe apologizing to mum, or maybe, you know, finding that space to ask her, is she okay? And in doing so, finding that courage to also share what's actually going on for you. So that's the ideal situation, is we can show young people that some of the tactics they may have are good, but you need to find the right moment, because if you fight an argument with more arguing, you're putting fuel on that fire. So perhaps what are some of those tactics to diffuse the argument from getting to that peak so that you can actually have proper communication going on there? And obviously the final scene that we replay, you guys have already seen. So the drug taking scene. Now, I just want to be clear, there's lots of correlations when it comes to drug taking and mental health for young people. Where we stand with that scene is we obviously want to be able to build resilience in terms of how do you say no to peer pressure? What are the other solutions to kind of like cope with that pressured situation? But actually that scene, where we like to take it is the education that Dan knows he's a predisposition to mental health issues. Him saying yes to that, drugs will spiral him down. So can we actually find communication going on where he can find a comfortable space to educate his own peers on that, you know? Some year groups, for example, we wouldn't necessarily showcase that particular scenario. Sometimes it could be using alcohol instead of drugs, or sometimes it could be peer pressure, just could be anything, you know, hanging out at the local mall and pressuring your peers into doing something you don't want to do. So that's a little bit about the story of Dan. And look, our programs are evidence-based. We have run some research. I will share some insights on that soon. We do also run program evaluation alongside our work. It's in line with the school curriculum. So the PE, HPE, mental health, help-seeking curriculum. Also, we have respectful relationships, so consent culture, which is in line with the curriculum, and also the drama curriculum for those that are doing drama that need to create their own independent work. We do have some programs in the peer support space that encourage that. Just one thing to note, that we are actually endorsed as a trusted e-safety provider program. So the mental health, the e-safety commission is really trying to make sure that all programs in this space, if we're talking about e-safety, are all on the same page when it comes to update information that we can provide and support young people with. So just a little bit of insight is we are actually award winning. So our program for schools did actually receive the New South Wales Mental Health Month Award that was acknowledged at Parliament House. We actually also received an award in 2019, which is the Mental Health Service Conference, for working alongside Team Health in the Northern Territory with some Indigenous young people. We support Palmerston, Darwin, and some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities around Kakadu National Park. So why theatre? What is our research telling us? The young people are telling us that our work is entertaining. When it comes to mental health education, they often expect that they're going to leave in tears or they're going to get bored, and our work is not boring. When it comes to the type of work that we do, one thing we've realized is through that humor, that is what invites young people in. Through the interactive nature and inviting them up on stage to play with us, we include the youth voice. And we also tend to have some pretty young actors that are working with us as well. So they really relate to the age of the cohorts that we're presenting. We know that the program is actually pretty good at engaging with those that are difficult to engage with. So the young people that are in at-risk groups, like we've worked in detention centres all over Australia now, and we've never had an issue tailoring the context to make it adaptable to the different at-risk groups. We know that there's more help seeking that occurs after the programs. We know that there's stigma reduction, and young people are finding that they're clearer on what help negation is out there. So what are the different pathways that they can actually seek help? And we find that the role play actually helps support building skills for them so that they can actually literally give it a go. So what we've found is, yeah, they're really starting to see that theatre on stage allows them to be able to reflect and put themselves in their shoes of the characters, giving them different options to kind of play within that safe environment, just in case they were ever dealt with any similar situations.
It was really cool. It was really interesting and different to all the other kinds of plays I'd seen before because it just tried something different. I mean, the other plays is not interactive and you just kind of sit there as if you're watching something. Whereas with this, it's more like you're part of the actions. It's like in a show when you feel like the character's doing something wrong and you want to tell them what to do, you just can't.
Coming and standing at a microphone and speaking to people, yes, they will get some messages out. Yes, they will let people know that services are available. But I think this format was far more interactive. It was far more, calling on students, as Donna said, to reflect on their own situation, to suggest solutions or things that they could do, and actually probably a much better way of engaging with the subject.
There are lots of variables into what makes people spiral down. And there are lots of different ways to deal with those things. And so it was eye-opening as to new ways, to the ways other people think, to the ways that they would do something. Instead of just always being inside my own head and to think about what they've said and think, maybe that's a good idea. And that was really, really very eye-opening.
My name's Melissa Robinson. I am the project coordinator for Kempsey Community Suicide Prevention. I work at the Macleay Vocational College, and today I had an opportunity to be in attendance at a Mind Blank performance at our school. I heard about Mind Blank at the beginning of this year and I was very interested in it, obviously from a suicide prevention point of view for our community. Today, seeing the performance, I am very confident that this program is something that is flexible enough, unique enough and adaptable enough to be able to work in our schools and in our community to give our young people a voice inside of schools and throughout the community about what they need in their lives and how to keep our community strong and healthy.
I just wanted to share that last video is because we find when people aren't familiar with the program, a lot of teachers can be a little bit skeptical going, there's taboo subject matter that we will be raising, particularly if it comes to the word suicide. And what I will share is that we are based off best practice and a do no harm model. The word suicide is mentioned once in that particular storyline when it comes to the story of Dan, and it's generally to just share that the character does feel like they're on a downward spiral and that's where they feel like they will be heading. And that's it. We do not stage anything. We just try and really advocate and sit in this early intervention space to just try and show them that there's all these different things that could lead up to mental and emotional imbalance. So look, I just thought I'd quickly run through, well, what are the different models that we have? We have a 1 hour stage play, which we come to your school. The research actually shows that a whole year group all in one is fantastic because you don't want to necessarily isolate those that may be more at risk, or, you know, you may have some leadership groups or young people that could also be struggling from it. And we don't necessarily just need to prioritize the SRC kids as well. So a whole year group approach, the live theatre model, is benefit from. We say 180 students per session because you just imagine more than 180 year nines all in the one group, it can be pretty restless. Though in saying that, our largest audience ever was Darwin High School with 400 year 10 students, and literally it went well because there was an army of teachers that were surrounding it to help support some of the behaviour management just in case it was needed. But look, audiences over 100 require microphones. Because of COVID, we've adjusted our model. So we've got a hybrid model where we've got some pre-filmed stuff that we can actually bring into the schools. And this is actually also a more cost-effective model. Instead of bringing the whole troupe of actors, you can bring a facilitator to work with the live videos, and you can still do some of that role play to get the same solutions out. And once again, we recommend 180 students, like the whole year group if you can. It depends on the size of your year groups. But the school must actually have a pretty decent sound setup or projector setup, or else that hybrid model may not work. Same with the online model. Look, we found that our clients are actually loving the live stuff. We do have online models. Some of the children and young people are just fatigued with too much screen time. But actually the online model can work quite well, particularly for regional or hard to get places. It's just that there has to be the right setup in the school setting, and that the teachers need to be familiar with the online education for us to be able to go there. There is that peer support model. So what that actually looks like is one of our MindBlank facilitators goes to the school, and we actually work with a classroom size of children and young people. That could be the drama students, for example, and we give them the skills and the keys they need to be able to perform to their peers. So we already know that there's a lot of evidence to say that young people go to other young people first when it comes to these issues. So giving the confidence for the young people themselves to be able to perform to their peers. So, for example, we could work with year 11 drama students that then performs to the year 10 students. It just allows for more relationship building, and it's a fantastic way to build relationships and get that content really sinking into the back of their heads. The whole school approach model. We know when it comes to mental health promotion, or health promotion in general, that it is advisable to work with the whole school from the top down model, because you want those behaviours to be modelled from year group to year group to year group. Now, it depends on the school and what you've already got going on, but because of that best practice, we absolutely love to work with schools looking at the perspective of how can we actually embed this training and help support young people, again, mainly through the peer support way, to give them the keys to then build some of this knowledge in-house and be able to perform it to their own peers. Just a quick case study, because I know that we're coming onto time and I want to allow for some questions and answers towards the end. I just want to share a testimony we had from a primary school age student. Now, this was actually anxiety was the issue. That one of the teachers had approached us saying that her particular years 5-6 students, she was feeling like around exam time their stress peaked, and that these children were feeling like they were getting a lot of pressure from home and external sources to do really well in school, and she could feel it creeping onto their shoulders of responsibility. And also in that age bracket, of course, it's the anxiety and concerns of transitioning into the next high school, you know, new change environment. So all sorts of things were going on. So we worked with a school with an anxiety education program. And I just wanted to share with you that there's this beautiful testimony that came from it, because there was this young girl who'd come up to our performers after the performance who had just shared, literally, that young girl fed back to the actor every single step that we had supported teaching the children to do, she followed those steps. So often with a primary school cohort, we ask them, you know, can you name 5 responsible adults you could go to in time of need, just in case the first one doesn't come up. So she came and identified another adult, because what had happened, she'd explained, she wasn't feeling well and she went to knock on the school counsellor's door and no one was there, so she gave up. And so she went and found one of the actors and she tried again, because she identified that she potentially could be experiencing anxiety. Now, I know there could be concerns with this cohort. Can they really understand mental health? And my response is, you betcha, because these children are actually craving these conversations. They're feeling some of these things and they may not always have the words to describe it. But how we educate mental health with them is they're aware of their emotional health to some extent, right? So if you're angry all the time or if you're sad all the time, you may need to tell someone, or you may need to get help. So this young person identified as having anxiety, went to the school counsellor, it didn't work. They found another responsible adult, told the responsible adult the story. The actor was then able to connect that young person to their school teacher, who then was able to actually follow the proper protocol, and she was booked in to see the counsellor the next day. So just such a lovely story about how the children and young people actually mirror these steps, and immediately after the programs, they are likely to be thinking about it. We do know from the research is they do go away and have these conversations with their peers, with their home environment, you know, to reflect on what's actually going on for them. Our research does show that the best case outcome you can get from our programs is tying it into what you're already doing in curriculum. So if you can, in your school group or year group, debrief the children and young people on the program and then make links back to what they're learning within PE, for example, it allows them just another chance to process and make those connections in terms of the insights. I have another case study. This was a regional town, and look, the reality is there are some communities that do really struggle, and the reality of suicide is there are some hotspots that come around, and there are some regional towns that don't have many services. So we were fortunate enough to be able to help support a regional town that had had, for over 2 years, they were really losing the battle when it came to high school age students who had been taking their life. It was horrific to hear the stories of what some of these young people had been going through. And if anything, there's a lot of maturity that has happened within that cohort as they now continue to keep surviving and building that resilience around them. But look, we were invited to come and work with community to provide some of our programs in. And I just want to share with you that there was this 1 year group. So we went back to, we've actually worked with this particular community for 4 years in a row. And we went back to, there were some year 9 students that took the program the first year. And then the second year, we would have done a new set of year 9 students. So we got a chance to talk to the first group a year later, if that makes sense. So the original year 9 students then became year 10 students, and we were able to have a chat to them. And it's amazing to see that over a classroom of 30, we had statistics that showed that up to 60% of them had actually helped support themselves or one of their peers in a time of need in that 12-month gap. There was also an incredible amount of insight in terms of what knowledge they were able to still remember from the program 12 months on. And so of a classroom of 30, having more than 60% of them actually apply the lessons was a fantastic initiative. So it's heartbreaking to hear how much they have actually gone through, but we certainly have received strength in testimonies from that particular region as to what has happened. And there was one person in community that had actually shared with us that they'd witnessed the high school children later after school hours, like on a public bus, reflecting and talking about how they were literally concerned with one of their peers. Don't you remember that play that we saw? I think this is happening. So it's great to hear that the work is a testimony in itself to the type of understanding that the young people can have post-program. So I wanted to make sure that you've got our details. Please stay in touch. We are on this mission to help support as many children and young people as we possibly can. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what questions that you may have from us. Before we even get there, I will share with you what is the most common group that we end up performing to. It ends up being year 9s. Something about them having a little bit less on the curriculum in terms of their busyness, and also that being sometimes a difficult year group. It really is the age where early onset of mental health kicks in. And for us, the best solution when it comes to supporting young people is let's get in there before it becomes an issue. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions, and let's keep in touch.